Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to our friends in India and good morning to our friends in Denmark. I'm Shivangi Jain from Invest India, the National Investment Promotion and Facilitation Agency of India. On behalf of our entire team and the Embassy of India in Denmark, we welcome you all to the launch event of the Indo-Danish Innovation Series 2020. We are honored and privileged today to have among ourselves His Excellency Mr. Ajit Gupte, Ambassador of India in Denmark, Mr. Deepak Bagla, Managing Director and CEO Invest India, and distinguished business leaders from top companies in India and Denmark who've joined us today to grace this occasion and share their insights and experiences under the panel discussion on the theme Advancing Cross-Border Startup Growth. We thank you very much. Startup India, a flagship initiative of the Government of India, is focused on building a strong ecosystem for nurturing innovations and startups in the country to drive sustainable economic growth and generate large scale employment opportunities. We are also focused on accelerating the growth of Indian startups beyond the Indian geography by mobilizing global capital for investments into promising Indian innovations, providing international market access, and creating an environment of frugal Indian innovation in global corporations and markets. Europe is one of the most preferred locations for Indian startups to expand their businesses. This makes Denmark an ideal market, acting as a gateway to the Nordic region for Indian startups. Today, India is the third largest market in terms of number of startups, while Denmark has emerged to be one of the most innovative markets in the last few years. Startup and technology collaborations have increased over the years between India and Denmark. To further deepen this collaboration, Startup India, Invest India, and Embassy of India in Denmark have come together for the launch of the Indo-Danish Innovation Series 2020. This unique program will provide Indian startups free of cost closed door mentorship by experts and leaders in the Denmark market for virtual expansion. We truly appreciate the support extended by the Embassy to drive this mission of joint innovation and collaboration. May I now please invite Mr. Deepak Bagla, the Managing Director and CEO, Invest India, for his introductory remarks and opening address.
Thank you, Shivangi. Thank you very much. And on behalf of Invest India, Startup India, and Agni, it is my absolute privilege to welcome you all. It is truly a very important launch. It's a very important day for us. It's very special. And the reason why I say that is because what is happening today is going to further strengthen a very special relationship which we have between our two countries, between Denmark and India. And this relationship is an old relationship which is now gaining huge strength and momentum. And for that, I have to thank our ambassador, His Excellency Mr. Ajit Gupte, for spearheading this entire new momentum on this entire corridor, which is further strengthening this entire very special bond. And I'll tell you why I say that. The other reason why I say that is if I look at the 141, 142 days of the most unprecedented lockdown India has been in through because of this virus, what we've seen is a number of companies from Denmark come forward and work with us very closely to see what we can do to fight this virus together. And their entire partnership has been across all spheres, be it bringing some innovative solutions, working with our startups, be it bringing PPEs or much needed other elements during this entire unprecedented lockdown. Before I start, and I know I have some of you with us on the panel, a very sincere note of gratitude to all of you to have partnered with us during this time especially. But more so, if you look at it, a large number of success cases in India come from companies which have been from Denmark. Be it across a large number of spheres, be it on sustainable development, be it on water, be it on telecom, it's across a number of sectors. In fact, as we speak, my team today is currently working very closely with 18 investment ideas which have come in from Denmark especially. These are large investments looking at India. But what is the further interesting element? Shivangi mentioned about the strong reputation of Denmark, especially in innovation and match that with the well known frugal innovation spirit of India. Let me give you a small example. On March 30th, when we started the lockdown, we did not have a single PPE being made in India. On the 15th of July, I have a run rate of over 800,000 PPEs a day, which includes ventilators, which includes all kinds of PPEs, with some of them requiring a very significant level of high technology. And you know what is interesting? All this was done by my very nimble MSMEs, by my very frugal, innovative startups, which matched up with my larger companies and produced them at a point where they're not just good enough for India, but they are now ready to be exported to the entire world. So it is not just quantity, it is not the ability of how to pivot their existing business models and do it fast, but also how to do it at a level which is of a global quality for the entire world. This is just one of those instances. And I think when we see this innovation, the spirit of innovation of both these countries join in together, it can create amazing solutions, not just for the people of India and the people of Denmark, but I would say for the entire world. It is also my absolute privilege. We have a very distinguished set of panelists and specialists today who will tell you more about it. We have Navneet Kapoor, who's the Chief Technology and Information Officer from Maersk. Thank you, Navneet, for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Linders, for joining us, the Managing Director for the Bevel AG and the Senior Vice President of Distribution and Partnerships at Oyo Vacation Homes. And we know Oyo, our startup and one of our unicorns, has been accessing the Danish market very successfully. And I'm sure a lot of it is thanks to you. Mr. Sridhar Iyengar, the Managing Director of Zoho Europe, again, one of our startups, which is quite well known now in Europe and also in Denmark. Mr. Dalela from Tata Consultancy Services, they don't need any introduction. He heads their office in Denmark. And then we have Mr. Dev, the Executive Vice President of L&T in Europe. Mr. Scholler, who's the Director of the Indo-Danish Chamber of Commerce. They're doing a great job, Mr. Scholler. Thank you very much for all your entire efforts and endeavors in further strengthening this relationship. And I must also thank the entire team at the Danish Innovation Center in Delhi. But Excellency, we really owe a lot to you. The support, the guidance, the enthusiasm with which you are leading this entire effort of strengthening this corridor has been remarkable. And we have already started seeing results. So with that, I congratulate you all once again to join us, and thank you all once again to join us on this very special launch, which will further create a very interesting sense of solutions, which are the challenges which are facing all of us today. With that, thank you very much, and Shivangi, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Bagla, for your valuable remarks. It is a privilege to have His Excellency Mr. Ajit Gupte, Ambassador of India and Denmark, with us today. Your Excellency, may I please request you to deliver the keynote address?
Good afternoon to my friends in India and good morning to my friends in Denmark. Let me first take the opportunity of thanking my good friend Deepak Bagla, the CEO and Managing Director of Invest India, for his support and assistance in organizing not only this, but many other initiatives. But we are really looking forward to working together to make the Indo-Danish Innovation Series an outstanding success, because it brings together two common aspects of India and Denmark, that is the strength of the SMEs and their innovative abilities. I am also gratified to see that there is a tremendous response with very large number of companies and people participating both from India and Denmark in today's event. During my presentation today, I would like to touch upon three areas. First is a brief introduction to Denmark and why it is relevant to India. I'll go into some detail on their strengths in startups and innovations. and finally go into some detail in specific areas where Denmark has technology and skills which would be of relevance to us. So let me begin with a brief introduction to Denmark. Denmark is a small country with about a population of 5.7 million, but it's a very technologically advanced country. The people are, of course, many of them are well educated, and their strategy has been to concentrate on some niche sectors and develop global leadership and companies which can operate at a global level in these areas. In addition to in addition to the 20 to 25 companies operating at a global level, they have about 10,000 SMEs. Many of the SMEs are concentrating in producing niche, innovative products, but also in terms of services. It is not just IT and fintech, but also areas of health services, design. Design is an area where Scandinavia is very strong, and I think there's a lot of potential for collaboration and cooperation between the two countries. But let me give some instances of Danish companies and how they contribute. You have a very large company like Maersk, and AP Moller, which is the largest shipping company in the world. And Maersk actually transports almost 20% of India's containerized cargo. They also transport almost one third of all our reefers. So they are contributing to the export of our fruits, vegetables, seafood, pharmaceuticals, etc. Then you have a company like Vestas, which is the largest uh, producer of wind turbines in the world. You have Grundfos, the largest manufacturer of smart pumps, Danfoss, which is known for cold storage. You have Lego, the famous company making toys, Carlsberg, the second or third most popular beer in the world, and it's also the second most popular beer in the world. So these are household names in Denmark, but often we don't necessarily associate them uh, with originating from Denmark. Now, in addition, Denmark has a lot of expertise in areas such as AI, robotics, machine learning, and they have clusters in these areas. They also have an excellent system of five or six outstanding universities with very good reputation across the world. And because there is a lot of trust between the government, between universities and the industry, they are able to come up with solutions which will be technologically advanced and on which there is a consensus. So there is very close cooperation in terms of policy making and policy formulation. And I think this again is very relevant for us. Now, why and how can Denmark help us? Firstly, I think there is the Danish people speak English. Most of them understand and speak very high level of English, although of course they prefer to talk in Danish. Uh, Denmark also, I think, with Brexit, offers a gateway not only to Scandinavia but all of Europe. There are not too many countries where the level of English is so good in Europe. Denmark ranks very high in terms of ease of doing business. It ranked first in Europe and fourth all over the world for ease of doing business. It was ranked number first by Transparency International for the least level of corruption. It is easy to set up an office over here. So I would urge Indian companies to look at partnering with Danish SMEs and looking at Europe by setting up operations in Denmark. Also, by and large, the Danish people are deeply committed to climate change, to meeting the SDG goals, to a circular economy, and they are friendly. But you do need to reach out to them and establish a relationship to take business prospects forward. Now, briefly, I would like to give you a little background of the bilateral relations. We have historically had friendly relations between India and Denmark. Denmark actually played an important role in our development partnership. Uh, uh, you might remember the White Revolution, and it was Danish high yield cows such as the Holstein Friesian and the Jersey, which helped to kickstart our White Revolution. And even today, there is a lot of equipment in the dairy industry, and we are doing from the embassy a lot of follow up in terms of ensuring that training courses, etc., are organized. Denmark has also helped the progress in our wind energy. In fact, the first wind turbine which came into India was one provided by Vestas. We have some good cooperation with a lot of Danish companies based in India producing wind turbines, nacelles, and hubs, who have actually exported almost $1 billion in the last 2 years out of India to global markets. Now, the bilateral relationship has improved significantly in the last few years. There was actually a freeze in relations between 2011 to 2016 when no government or ministerial contact was allowed. This was because of the extradition of Kim Davy, a Danish national who was responsible for the Purulia arms drop in 1996. However, we have now had two meetings between the prime ministers in 2018 and 2019. The Danish foreign minister has visited India 3 times in the time that I have been here. We have also put in place a very good framework for bilateral talks and consultations. We have set up 9 joint working groups, which have actually met 17 times in the last 2.5 years. So 9 joint working groups meeting 17 times. I think it is some kind of a record. We've also signed 14 important MOUs and agreements in the last 2.5 years. There are 2 sister city relationships. There are another 20-25 agreements between universities, think tanks, cultural organizations, etc. So by and large, what I wanted to convey is that there is a tremendous amount of goodwill. Our Prime Minister has given the mantra in the last meeting that Denmark has the skills while India has the scale. So I would urge all of you to capitalize on the opportunity where Danish companies are ready to offer their technology and to build bridges. Now, a little bit about the startup sector in Denmark. So Denmark is also one of the fastest growing startup sectors, and it is one of the most important startup hubs in Europe. Because of the system, it is constantly innovating. It can produce technology and solutions. There are a number of innovation hubs, tech clusters, and office spaces in major cities. It has a strong entrepreneurial spirit. There are a lot of young people doing innovation here, and they are keen to cooperate with India. A lot of the policies favor the Danish entrepreneurship system. There have been a couple of major events which are being organized where I would like to have encourage Indian companies to participate. One is a tech barbecue event, which is organized annually, and there is a Copenhagen for the Win event. Now, Denmark has produced uh, a lot of successful startup companies. There have been quite a few unicorns, but many of them have sold out. And they often, once they reach a certain level, they sell out to US or European companies. So I'll give you some examples. You can do your research also. There's a company called Zendesk Incorporated, a customer service software company. It was founded in 2007 in Denmark, but now it has expanded in the US. Then you have Unity Technologies. It is a video game software company founded in Denmark in 2004, but then acquired. So Denmark is also strong in gaming and entertainment. There are good opportunities there. Now we have 2 or 3. I'll just take 1 or 2 minutes more. We have 2 or 3 examples of Danish companies which are doing well in India. In robotics, we have a company called Artificial Robots, which actually makes a programmable robotic arm. They are supplying their robotic arms to a number of companies, but I'll just give one example. Bajaj Auto has quite a few of these robots which are used in the manufacture of two-wheelers. They are also doing good business in the pandemic. We have another company trying to enter the Indian market recently during the pandemic called UVB Robots. UVB Robots. Their robots have been very successful in disinfecting hospitals and ICUs during the pandemic. They are looking at opportunities. There is another very small startup, Poor City, with a very interesting concept of developing ceramic tiles which can absorb pollutants in the atmosphere, and then the pollutants are absorbed and then flushed down through a water system. They are also looking at possible funding, not very much, maybe 5 million rupees to make a success story. You have another company like Aquaporin. It's a clean tech company which produces water membranes both for household and industrial use. They are entering the Indian market, but they are looking for partners. So, just to sum up, Denmark has a lot of SMEs, which are really the strength of the Danish economy. They are keen to engage with India because of the improved relations. They are looking actively at Asia because Asia is a huge market, but we do need to reach out and establish contacts. And I'm confident that the Indo-Danish Innovation Series will act as a facilitator for building bridges between Indian and Danish companies. Thank you very much, Deepak and Shivangi, for inviting me, and wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for the guiding words and emphasizing on the importance of India-Denmark relations and synergies between the two markets. This brings us to the launch of the program. The main goal of this unique initiative is to encourage cross-border knowledge exchange and prepare entrepreneurs for expansion to Denmark and vice versa. Through this program, Indian startups that are keen to explore Denmark as a market for their business expansion will be mentored by industry experts and leaders. The entire program will be focused on one-to-many mentorship model, covering various essential topics to prepare startups to build an in-depth understanding of the strategies to be adopted to navigate the market and set up their shop virtually during these challenges times of the pandemic. The program is envisioned to have 6 closed-door mentorship sessions spread over 3.5 months. More than 12 experts from Denmark will share their knowledge with Indian startups and address the challenges for virtual market expansion and customer acquisitions. Topics covered will range from laws and regulations, culture, opportunities in green tech, fast-growing sectors, to public funding scenarios and more. Each session will be of 60 minutes duration, followed by a breakout session where the startups and the speakers can also connect virtually. We look forward to not just having Indian but also global startups keen on venturing into Denmark to expand their sales and operations. Without further ado, may I request His Excellency Mr. Ajit Gupte and Mr. Deepak Bagla to please press the button for the launch. We sincerely thank you for joining us today to grace the occasion. Thank you very much, sirs.
Thank you, and good luck.
New and innovative business models have been transforming and disrupting traditional industries at an unprecedented speed. A key rule in starting a new business today is to think global. Although many startups know that it is important to think global and expand internationally for additional revenue, cater to new customers, the underlying actions required may not always be as clear or simple. Each country has a different environment and multiple factors play a role. Having the right kind of business model, the company budgets, cultural idiosyncrasies, opportunity the target market has to offer, partnering with local talent and companies, product differentiation, and so much more. It's definitely not a straightforward process, especially for the startups. India and Denmark have enjoyed strong relationships and excellent cooperation based on synergies in academic, economic, and research fields. With a bilateral trade of over $1.3 billion, we are already working on cooperating in certain sectors such as renewable energy, food processing, sustainable and smart urban development. This will also be reflected in the sector-specific sessions in the Indo-Danish Innovation Series. India and Denmark have also similar focus on driving entrepreneurship at local level. Startup India, for example, has facilitated at least one startup in each of the 565 districts of the country. And Denmark has publicly funded business development centers at 12 different locations around the country where startup can get free, independent, and professional guidance. Well, many folks learned it the hard way. We've tried to simplify it for you in today's panel discussion on advancing cross-border startup growth. We aim to touch base on each of these important factors and understand from the leaders who venture into international markets successfully. I now have the pleasure of introducing the panelists who've agreed to join us today. Mr. Navneet Kapoor is the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer and a member of executive leadership team at AP Moller Maersk. At Maersk, he leads the agenda to transform the company digitally and into a global integrator of container logistics. Mr. Kapoor has a career of over 20 years and is passionate about working with startup ecosystem. Apart from serving on the selection committee for 10,000 Startup Warehouse, he launched the Target Accelerator program in 2014 and recently launched a unique accelerator program with Maersk called Ocean Pro. We welcome you, Mr. Kapoor. As the managing director for Bellwiller and
It's
senior
great to
vice
be here.
president,
Thank you.
thank you so much. As the managing director of Bellwiller and senior vice president of distribution and partnerships, Mr. Martijan Leenders is a senior leader in leisure industry. He's been a core driving person behind transforming the demand side of Oyo Vacation Homes product. A veteran of several startups across Europe and having lived in different countries, he understands the particular challenges of working across different cultures very well. We welcome you, Mr. Leenders. Mr. Sridhar Iyer, as the head of Zoho Europe, is spearheading Zoho's business development in the Europe region. He's been with the company since its inception and as the first employee has been a part of its 24-year-long journey from a bootstrap startup to a global software company.
Thank you,
He has
Shivangi, for having.
Thank you. Thank you so much. He's also taken on multiple leadership roles in product management, design, engineering, marketing, and business development. We thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Enger. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me here. Appreciate it.
Mr. Richard Delela heads the Denmark region for Tata Consultancy Services, also known as TCS, supported by over 2,000 employees across the globe, of which 600 are located in Denmark. He oversees strategic customer, organizational, and operational functions for the region. In the last 20 years that Mr. Richard has worked with TCS, he's occupied several leadership roles across different markets. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Richard.
Thank you for inviting me, Shivangi. It's a pleasure to be a part of this conversation.
Thank you. Mr. Mads Schlosser joins us from Indian-Danish Chamber of Commerce and has been the director of IDCC since 2018. Since its launch in 2016, IDCC has witnessed a significant development reflecting the ever-increasing interest of the Danish business community in the world's largest democracy. IDCC now represents more than 30 companies with presence in India, some of which date back as far as 1904. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Mads. Also to specify, he also studied in India for a year. Thank you so much.
And thank you for having me.
Mr. Sarabjit Deb, the Executive Vice President, Europe, based in Copenhagen, represents Larsen and Toubro Group in Europe as a corporate function supporting L&T's business units and global companies. He was deputed to Nordic region 20 years ago to set up. Mr. Deb has over 36 years of experience in ICT industry in various regions of Nordic India and Middle East. He has created partnerships with companies based in Europe to address local and global opportunities. And he's also an active member of trade and industry bodies in Europe. We welcome you, Mr. Deb. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Shivangi, for having me and to be part of this panel. Thank you.
A sincere gratitude and thank you to all the panelists for joining us today. Without further delay, we are going to start the discussion on the much-awaited panel. So my first question actually goes out to Mr. Sridhar Iyer from Zoho and also Mr. Leenders to understand, because we all know that expanding to new markets is really tricky, especially for the young startups who have little or in some cases no knowledge. Given this context, what according to you, could be some key factors which should be kept in mind while considering international expansion? And what, as per you, are the green and the red flags in this area?
So maybe I'll go first. That's fine. So by the way, small correction, it's Sridhar Iyengar. Could be considered a blasphemy in Tamil Nadu, but we are out of that geography. But
Sure.
so, well, coming to expansion, I would say it's a very open-ended question, and each company, each organization, and their founders have to basically ask some fundamental questions on what is the nature of your business and what is your business model, your business strategy. Because if you are a company who's trying to solve a very local problem, localized solution, then maybe expansion is not the right solution. However, if you are looking at, let's say, expanding your markets, because basically expansion, geographical expansion is basically another way of distribution. And if you're looking at that and you have the right innovative solution and you find a market that you can address, by all means, expansion is something to be considered. However, if you're considering international expansion, keep in mind that there's a lot of difference between cultures, expectation. You have to deal with not just your global competitors, also local competitors. So all of that has to be kept in mind because understanding a market and being successful requires patience. It requires a basic. It's a long-term strategy. It's not something that you can immediately expect results from, unless you have an exceptional and a very unique product or solution. So that kind of a long-term strategy or long-term expectation should be part of what you want to do. But then it comes back to you have to realize your strength, you have to find the market and try to be the best in it. Because even when you have to compete in the Danish market, you'll have a lot of innovative companies doing, providing innovative solutions. You have to stand out really. But then if you're decided and going with it, I would say find a local partner who understands the geography well, because this is going to be a learning experience for any new company or startup that's starting on their international journey. And then of course, things like you have to offer solution that is localized, you have to be able to connect with the local market customers, and a partner can certainly help you in this journey.
Yeah, wise words. I think I would like to focus on actually another aspect. Oyo as a unicorn, of course, is one of the companies India is proud of, and I think expansion for Oyo Hotels has been very much a combination of expanding a business model which worked domestically in India to other geographies. However, a year and a half ago, the company realized we want to also expand in different areas of this industry. So hospitality is more than hotels. Vacation homes, holiday homes in Europe and globally are a very quickly expanding part of the business. And Oyo made the decision actually to not start from scratch, but just it's of course a major feat, do an acquisition in Europe. And that created a very interesting combination of a 5-6-year-old unicorn expanding extremely fast, hyper growth with European company, which has 65 plus years of experience in a very established market. So I think the answer, if you want to expand globally, and I'm largely agreeing therefore with what my colleague says here, look at the specific situation. It could be organic, it could be an acquisition, it could be, as you say, a partnership. But be flexible, open-minded. And one of the other little things I would like to add here is specifically for Denmark. I've seen in the past year that a lot of the colleagues and companies from India trying to invest in Europe somewhat underestimate the cultural differences. I'm not Danish. For me, Denmark is already a challenge sometimes. The differences within Europe are huge. So keep that in mind when you roll out.
Thank you, Mr. Iyengar, and thank you, Mr. Leenders, for this. I just have a follow-up question for you, Mr. Leenders. As Mr. Sridhar had mentioned about the importance of competition and importance of local partnerships. I think Oyo, especially in its early days, faced a lot of competition. Of course, continues to face so even at this large level of expansion. So how has the process and the journey been for you, and how has Oyo actually embraced this competition rather than really, seeing it as a threat?
Well, I think it's a bit of both. Competition is needed. We love competition. I mean, imagine watching a football or cricket match without a competitor. That would not be fun. So we're in it for the business, but we're also in it to enjoy ourselves on the ride. Competition is something that our founder, Ritesh Agarwal, has embraced from the start. As a student, a 19-year-old, trying to battle global giants like Hyatt, Hilton, those kind of hotel chains, empowering small independent hotels, and finding an ecosystem which actually challenges that. That is raising the bar and aiming for the stars in that sense. Competition today in Denmark is strong. As said, it's a very well established industry. And we love it when we see a competitor coming with a great idea, because it challenges us and it stimulates our creativity to come actually with an even better solution. That's how the world moves ahead, right?
I think we can't agree with you more. And yes, I think it does play a very important role, and we hope that our startups can also learn from that. This brings me to you, Mr. Ruchikar. Operating in the Denmark market for a while, what, according to you, is the strategic advantage that Denmark as a market has to offer for the upcoming, Indian innovations, especially through this program?
Yeah, I think there are many things that, especially for the Indian startups, that they can benefit from Denmark as a market. Not the least is the market itself. There are iconic companies. Mr. Ambassador mentioned some of them: Lego, Carlsberg, Maersk, and so on. But I think beyond that, there is an enormous amount of respect and support for innovation that exists in Denmark as a society. Uh, there are a significant amount of programs and partnerships that Indian startups can leverage. There are a significant amount of technology, whether it's buying or licensing, that they can potentially explore. There is a huge amount of support that Denmark and Danish government provides to cross-border collaboration. As in, we had the chance to explore some of it. We have a collaboration with DTU and IITs, and we are working with a joint project with the Danish government. And that was my first exposure to how the Danish government facilitates these things. And I was truly amazed by the ease and simplicity by which they allow the industry and academia partnerships to happen, to facilitate and bring out new ideas. So I think I would really recommend the startups in India to look at Denmark not only as a market, but also as different ways to collaborate, to partner, and look at sourcing even new technologies.
Surely, and we are confident that the startups have actually noted this point. Moving to you, Mr. Navneet, especially in the smart logistics space, what opportunities do you see for the Indian startups to further expand to Denmark or other parts of the Nordic region? Mr. Navneet, we can see you.
I think the stream may be frozen, Shivangi.
The
Yeah.
mic seems to be muted.
That's okay. So we'll get back to, yeah, Navneet, now your mic is unmuted. So
Can you hear me now?
yes, we can hear you very well.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Mr. Navneet, we can hear you very well now.
Oh. Can you hear? Okay. As I was saying, at Maersk, we believe that innovation
So we'll wait for Mr. Navneet to join back. Um, Mr. Ruchikar, coming back to you, can you shed some light on the TCS Co-Innovation Program for technology startups, and how can TCS support the Indian startups in their cross-border expansion, and what's next in the pipeline for you?
Yeah. So just as a context, before I jump into talking about it, as a context, as a company, as an organization, we've had a very long association with research and innovation. I think it was almost 40 years ago. In 1980, we set up the first, perhaps, IT research center in Pune, what is called as TRTDC, Tata Research Development and Design Center. Uh, and and over the course of years, when I look back, I find that this focus on research and innovation has really helped us stay ahead in the industry that moves so fast. And this long exposure to research and innovation has also given us a very deep appreciation of the fact that you know innovation is never done in silos or in boxes. It's an open thing, and so therefore, very early on, I think Navneet is back. But just to complete my point, very early on, we understood the fact that if we have to innovate, we need to bring an open innovation framework. The clients that we work for, most of them are leaders in what they do. I mean, Maersk is an example, and all the others. But our clients are looking forward to stay ahead in their own marketplaces by doing changes to what they do while they are still ahead, right? And that gives us a responsibility to bring what we find new to them, to potentially live, to potentially analyze and to take it forward, right? So to that extent, we created this what we call as a co-innovation network, COIN, in which we scan startups from all over the world, uh, about 2,000 startups, with a view to potentially see what could be interesting to many of our clients. And we regularly take some of these things to our clients. I mean, close to home, with PostNord, we have done a lot of work in IoT with many startups. Similarly, Norway, the largest bank in Norway is DNB, and they wanted to launch a digital bank. Usually, banks run these programs in a very long manner. It takes about a year or so. But then we talked about it, about leveraging Coin, and we came out with a strategy of using APIs and startups only, right? So, and within a space of 6 weeks, they could launch first prototype of Fabi Bank already in Norway. And then we used startups. For example, we used an Israeli startup called Scanovate that does a complete eKYC solution, or another Nordic startup called Proximi, which looks at the location-based offers and so on. So I think our focus on our co-innovation network is to bring value to our clients, and to create listening spaces for the startups and academia that we partner with, and that's the agenda that we try to bring in.
We're actually really glad to hear that TCS is already so closely working with the startups, because our programs on the corporate and startup innovation bit, they really are at the forefront, and they really do play a key role. Mr. Navneet, we are happy to have you back. So while we want to understand from you the opportunities that the startups have in the smart logistics space, we would also like you to touch base on the Ocean Flow program that Maersk has, and how have you been collaborating with the startups, and what opportunities do Indian startups have here?
Yeah, thanks, Shivangi. I have a really bad connection, so apologize for that. I'm glad to be back on again. Uh, we've been running the Ocean Pro program for the last 3 years, where we look to incubate startups, primarily in India, about 5 at a time, that we get to work on strategic priorities for the company. We assign them partners within the company who are sponsors for that work. And the agenda is to drive some kind of a proof of concept within the 4 months of engagement. And if that engagement is successful, then of course we want to continue with that by either onboarding the startup or figuring out a partnership or even looking at potential acquisitions. We We've graduated 3 batches so far, and we found some great technology products and ideas to leverage, ranging from track and trace ideas to figuring out how we can look at a trucking platform in this marketplace for Maersk. We're looking at customer sentiment focused startups. We're looking at startups that can help us drive conversion on our dominant customer-facing platform, Maersk.com, and so on. So it's a fairly broad spectrum of startups we engage with. We provide them not just the business problem to work with, we kind of hold their hands and co-create the solutions with them. And the intent is to make that partnership work. It's not about ticking a box. So we're very deliberate about it, and we don't onboard a startup till we actually have a strong business sponsor within our teams. We've had some good success in the last 2.5, 3 years. One of the startups called Link Dots, which is a track and trace software, is today deployed across their products deployed across multiple countries for Maersk. We're working with many other startups as we speak. We just graduated the 3rd cohort. So Maersk believes, as I was saying earlier, I didn't know if that came through, that innovation can come from anywhere. We have a investment arm in Denmark, in Copenhagen, called Maersk Growth. And then we have Ocean Pro that's looking at startups in this geography. And of course, we have internal focus on innovation as well. We are in the middle of a massive transformation, a digital transformation, and we need to be able to tap into the best ideas from anywhere in the world. So we're always open to new ideas and listening to new product concepts from the startups we engage with, because we believe not only will they help us accelerate our transformation, they bring in new ways of working. They help us change the DNA we're looking to build, which is more of a test and learn, a risk-taking DNA within the company. So it's a very fruitful partnership, and we are keen to partner even more with the startup ecosystem.
And Mr. Kapoor, if we could also understand from you that what opportunities do Indian startups have in the smart logistics space in Denmark? If you could also shed some light on that.
Yeah, I mentioned a couple of ideas earlier. There's a lot of work happening, right? One of the areas, as I mentioned, within logistics is around track and trace. How do you track the container? How do you track the movement of trucks around the world, both inland and on ship? So there's a whole focus on that. There's a focus on building platforms for the future. This spans a variety of logistics and services products we are engaging with, from intermodal to custom house brokerage to cold storage. So any of the ideas that help us innovate in these spaces, offer better solutions to our customers, are of interest to us. While we're building a lot of these platforms in-house, we want to make sure that if there's something out there that we can tap into, then that helps us accelerate our journey. So the space is fairly wide, and I gave the examples earlier. Everything from customer sentiment kind of startup ideas in logistics to figuring out how do we respond to the needs faster, and so on.
Sure. Thank you so much for shedding light on that. And we would request our viewers to kindly note these programs, because they can be of huge benefit to you, especially the ones operating in the sector already. Mads, we really want to understand from you where we've touched base on certain sector opportunities. Where can IDCC, play a role in terms of supporting these Indian entrepreneurs who are looking to expand to Denmark?
Well, IDCC is still a young organization, but we are very proud to be the primary point of contact for any Indo-Danish business-related topics. And we strive to support any such queries the way we can, the best we can. We collaborate very broadly with a lot of Indian and Danish stakeholders, and we leverage that network to support those queries also. In terms of Indian startups, it's not something we have dealt so much with as of yet, but it's something that we could look into and explore together with us, our partners in India and in Denmark as well.
Thank you, Mads. We are happy to hear that you're aligned on supporting us on this initiative and going forward. Maybe I think this is one area where we'll work together closely, and we'll venture into this area. Mr. Sarbjeet, we also wanted to understand that how can L&T play a role, and how have your collaborations been previously here?
Thank you, Shivangi. Larsen and Toubro, or L&T as it's known in India, comes from Denmark. Our two founders were Danish. So this partnership goes back 82 years ago when our founders came from Schmidt to set up the company in India. And from then on, there are at least uh, 20 Danish companies who have established. Ambassador mentioned about the White Revolution, and L&T Nairo was one of the key players in the White Revolution in India during that time. And from then on, there has been a series of partnerships with Danish companies, either as joint ventures or as technical partnerships, which has carried on. To mention a few, apart from Schmidt, of course, you have Holder Topso, you have Gear Nairo, you also have Ramble. We work with Covi. They are for projects not only in India, but also in other parts of the world. And on a later stage, as startups have come up, as we see, and the collaboration has now established in IT, where even a small company in Horsens like Logic IU was implementing the L&T digital initiatives, which got covered in recently in Harvard Business Review. And this is a small company in which they call a scale up. A similar side, we are partners with Copenhagen FinTech as well as Hello Science, uh, consortium of Danish ecosystem of startups. And we work with some of them. One of them is Leapwork, which again is a scale up now, where we are working with them globally as well as in Denmark for some of our customers, bringing innovative ideas. So it has been a long journey, and we continue into this journey. And we would like to invite Indian startups, as we are working with over 3,000 of them with 18 business units. Because we are a large company with different businesses, each of the startups work with individually with the business units.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dev, for giving us a good history of how India and Denmark are natural partners. Mr. Sridhar Iyengar, this brings me back to you. So while we've discussed the opportunities and synergies, basis your experience, what do you see are the key differences between the two markets which the startups should know and aware of before they even start exploring? We would request you to please switch on, please unmute yourself.
Thank you for reminding me. Yes. So regarding, I would just say about the differences. So, well, what that basically, if you look at it, the difference between the Indian startup ecosystem and the Danish ecosystem, well, there are similarities and differences. Similarity is, I think, with the new generation of startup, you're seeing they're trying to adopt a lot of new technology, trying to use technology to solve business problems. But India is still a relatively emerging market. Denmark is a very well-established market. So if you look at internet penetration, if you look at mobile phone penetration, is very, very high. And India is heading towards that direction, not there quite yet. So if you look at it, what you have to basically, what that means is you can actually use technology as a means to solve these kind of business problems. And that gives opportunity to Indian startups, or startups on both sides, to collaborate. It could be collaborate in terms of distributing products from one country to another. So that's some kind of a sales partnership, or it could be co-development because you have great development ecosystem on both sides. So because, and in the startup world, there's lots of things to be done, and you need talent. And what we've all learned from I won't say post-COVID world because we're still in a COVID world. So, you can actually collaborate with teams anywhere because we all have the tools to do it. And that means you could have teams spread across geographically to basically work on problems, hard problems, because hard problems take longer to solve and You have to have the best of minds to do that. So these are some areas that, both these ecosystems can work together. There are some differences as well. So if you look at India, it's a very price sensitive market, which basically leads to some form of frugal innovation that was talked about earlier. So you always look at what's the a low cost way of doing it. But whereas in Denmark, low cost, while if you take a low cost approach, you also have to ensure it's very high quality, because the quality expectations from stability, robustness, reliability is very high. So you have to ensure that in mind. Otherwise, you won't meet the market expectations and be successful. Right? So I would say a lot of this has to, for every company, you have to go with certain assumptions, go with a trusted partner, build your own trust, in the market, because that is very important. And things like, for example, if you're operating in the European market, not even in Danish market, things like data privacy, security comes top of the mind. That is number one, and that is what is going to help you build trust for your brands. So things like this are, I would say, very unique to Europe and to the Danish market. So you have to keep this in mind and prioritize that amongst with several things. And while you make this assumption, expect your assumptions to be proven wrong, in which case you have to be flexible and adaptable to change it. So one example of that is people think of Europe as one thing. Set up an office in Europe and you can sell everywhere. What I learned from, because although we've been in Europe, Soho has had customers in Europe for 20 years. Our physical office came only 2 years back when I moved here. And what we learned is it sometimes looks like India to me. If you're successful in northern part of India, it doesn't mean that you're going to be successful in southern part of India. Meaning if you're successfully selling in Denmark, doesn't mean that you're going to be successfully selling in France or Spain. Each country has its own dynamics, and you have to understand that very well. And we found that as well. So it could be in terms of the solution that you need, in terms of pricing, in terms of approach, in terms of the way you conduct business, everything is different.
Thank you, Mr. Iyengar. This has been very helpful. Since you touch base on the culture aspect, and of course, it plays a key role. So, Mr. Dev and Mr. Leenders, I would really want to understand from you that what specifically do you think can be the challenges on the culture side, which, let's say, your respective organizations had to tackle, and how can startups who are in this nascent stage right now, how can they mitigate, these challenges? So maybe we can start with you, Mr. Dev.
Yeah, I mean, startups, as they focus on keeping their costs under control and go for customer acquisitions and partnership, it's important to understand the work cultures are different, both in Denmark and, as mentioned by other speakers, also Sridhar, in other parts of Europe. So in Denmark, when the Indian startups come, how do you work with Danish startups, Danish companies? But ultimately, both quickly learn to adapt and work together to identify a common goal. Because even the Danish startups have a cost pressure. So they would like to also see how do you bring down cost, and at the same time, the speed in terms of deployment to address the market needs. That's the innovative and the agility which startups in Denmark bring, which startups in India also bring. And then the scale is companies like us, companies like Tata provide in terms of scale, how those startups can also work with us, or the Danish companies, as Navneet mentioned from Maersk, how they work because the scale is provided by the large companies. So I think this work culture is something which is very important to understand. The way we work in India, the way we work in Denmark is different, but we quickly adapt to that.
Mr. Leenders, if you have anything to add here.
I always have something to add. No, I'm thinking because on one side I really like this topic. On the other side, I do want to highlight the fact that there is way more that binds us and unites us than that there are differences, and a lot of the differences are actually to some extent cosmetic, superficial. And I think as a startup, you're always trying to find your place in the world. to find a niche or a specific business where you can excel. And I think there's no fundamental difference in that aspect between a Danish startup and an Indian startup. That's what we all have in common. Having worked closely with a lot of colleagues in India in the past years, I can confirm what the others say about different work attitudes, different work ethics, culture, everything around it. And it is a clash. And it goes two ways, actually. I've seen a lot of colleagues in Denmark feeling completely overwhelmed, having the feeling that colleagues in India, based in India, are working twice the number of hours compared to Denmark. And it's sometimes difficult. You wake up in Denmark and India is already 3.5 or 4.5 hours ahead. So they've had already half a working day. But then the work ethic tends to be that people in India keep working even till Denmark starts to close shop. So you feel sort of under pressure. What we've seen in Oyo is that, Oyo Vacation Homes especially, is that we've tried to create the best of both worlds. So actually most of the Indian colleagues are now working a little bit less hours, realizing that is not always the key to success. You have to be smart and efficient in using your time. I think that's definitely a learning. Other elements I would like to highlight is that India is a big country. I'm not telling anything new here. Denmark is a small country. What you see there is that it also affects, again, the culture, because in an India setting, a lot of the colleagues have the feeling and the pressure, if I'm not performing, there's going to be 100 others to replace me. Whereas in Denmark, people feel a little bit more comfortable and confident. From my perspective, that has really motivated actually people in Denmark to work a little bit harder, to go along with that, and to understand that maybe we were a little bit too sleepy, maybe we could innovate faster, set higher targets. So I think that's the fun of working cross-culturally. You try to really take the best of both worlds. I hope that gives.
It definitely
gives some
does.
answer.
Since you
Thanks.
also touch base on, how COVID has really affected the businesses, and of course, many people have lost jobs. Startups have been pivoting their business models. Hospitality industry, unfortunately, has also been majorly hit. So, what has been your strategy on this front, especially in the Nordic region, and how have you really revised or maybe pivoted or revamped your business strategies on this front?
Yeah, thanks. First of all, I do really hope that everybody who's listening is safe and is taking care. These are exciting times, difficult times. The fact that we're doing this via video, I think, is also a testament to the special situation we're in. You're completely right. Travel, hospitality has been very hard hit by this pandemic. Within the company, this created a bit of a almost schizophrenic situation, because after the initial couple of weeks in Europe, we quickly saw actually Denmark recovering way above our expectations. At the same time, for the hotel side, things are tough. So as a company in general, we're really focusing on increased hygiene, making sure we have the best program in the market in place to restore confidence that people, when they start traveling, know that they can count on the environment being safe. Specifically for Denmark, as I already said, we were surprised by how quickly that market recovered. The Danish government made the decision to early announce that international travel would be very difficult. So what we saw was that suddenly people started traveling domestically. And this is also, again, this is a pivot. We quickly changed our guest audience for the Danish properties from largely German guests to domestic Danish guests. And this resulted, and I almost feel embarrassed to say so in front of maybe colleagues who are also in travel, but we've had the absolute best year ever for our Danish product. So this shows that even a difficult time like this offers opportunity. and be open to that. Yeah, that's I think where we were maybe a bit lucky, but we're also very agile in tapping into this opportunity.
Thank you so much, and we really hope Oyo's journey is onwards and upwards from here. Matt's coming back to you. So, Indo-Danish synergies extend beyond just supporting trade, industry, and startups. How do you think the innovation capacity of Denmark and scaling capacity of India can be synergized? What are your thoughts on that?
As Ambassador rightly mentioned, when our then Prime Minister met with Mr. Modi, he said that Denmark has the skills and India has to scale. This is something we've been focusing on also. So I think the synergies are also very apparent in, on the one side, the Danish companies and the competencies they present, and then the challenges that are present in India. But on the other hand, I would also like to mention that we see more and more that India certainly also has the skills and perhaps the skills to help Denmark with some of the challenges that we are facing. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, could you repeat the question if I missed something, Shivangi?
I think it was, more on the synergies that both the markets have, and how do we kind of leverage on, the scaling capacity of India and innovation capacity of Denmark. So, if you had any additional thoughts, so we know that you covered a few pointers here which are very relevant. If there's anything more to add, or even if the rest of the panelists have anything to add on this question, we would really like to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much, Mads, for this one. Coming back to you, Mr. Navneet, why do you think? Why does digital transformation of any brand, play a key role in achieving large market share? And how do you think nurturing and mentoring founders actually helps develop companies across geographies and startup stage? And of course, this is very relevant because right now, the series that we have launched is with respect to that. So, how do you think that can play a key role, and what are the aspects that we can really focus on to make this a successful initiative?
Yeah, Shivangi, I think the topic of digital transformation, I think, is well understood today, but it's worth repeating that all large businesses are undergoing some kind of transformation, and that transformation has been necessitated by the massive disruption that's been caused by technology. Business models being disrupted around the world. New business models, even the ones represented on this call, have been enabled in the last couple of decades that would not have been possible in the past. So companies have, that we would call as old economy businesses, need to transform if they want to stay relevant. And the ones that are coming up are already digitally native and are taking advantage of the opportunities that the internet and computing speed and the reach that they create allow us to take advantage of. But it's a very hard transformation because it's not just about technology. It's about culture. It's about leadership. It's about people. But tech definitely plays a big part of it, and I think companies are taking advantage of that. In shipping and logistics, it's really about serving our customers very differently. In an industry like shipping has been very high touch. You actually needed to be present in every market to be able to grow your business in the past. But today our customers are accessing our products with the touch of a button. And that means very different operating models, very different cost to serve. The expectations are changing in our customers, based on what they are experiencing in their personal lives through technology, and they expect more of the same in their professional lives. And hence, companies need to keep pace with that, and not just keep pace, understand what it takes to truly differentiate oneself. So, tremendous opportunities, also tremendous challenges. Most large companies will unfortunately fail with their transformation. But it does create lots of possibilities, definitely for the smaller players to come and partner, to serve, to help larger companies serve their customers better. geographical reach is no longer an issue. So you can collaborate very differently than we may have done in the past. I think the COVID has only accelerated that change. But tech is fundamentally now at the driver's seat of a lot of the change, and that means that there's a level playing field for the big players and the small players.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kapoor, and I can't agree with you more on this because, of course, the online world, the digital transformation has actually brought the world closer in these times, and hence we all have been able to join. Which otherwise, I mean, I think this entire shift has actually made it very easy to really network for the startups and other ecosystem players also, and really build on the networking opportunities that this time has offered us. Mr. Ruchikar, since you come with a lot of experience in the Denmark market, just want to understand from you, what are the 3 or 4 things which, in terms of adaptability, an Indian company expanding to Denmark should keep in mind, or what are those 3 or 4 factors which should definitely be considered and taken care of when the market is being explored?
Yeah, I think, Shivangi, many of us spoke about different nuances to this, but I think there are obviously straightforward aspects like the legal considerations, the taxation, the employment considerations, and so on. Then there are softer sides to it. There's the ways of working, right? How do you work? And Martin spoke about some of them, and at least in my view, looking at Denmark as a market is more than just looking at it from a size perspective, right? If you look at it as a country, it has only 5.5 million people, and therefore it would be too simplistic to compare it with, let's say, a UK or a US and say it's extremely small. But I think if one digs in a bit deep and look at the various sectors, one would find that there are market leaders in different sectors, and how do you, and then one can think of how do you make use of that as a market, right? So, for example, the whole robotics, Denmark is one of the leaders in robotics as a discipline, right? And many of our clients that we work with, we closely work with the Odense Robotics Cluster here to create newer solutions for them. My suggestion to the Indian startups is to, like I think Sridhar also mentioned, not treat of Europe as one single country. Europe is very diverse. Each country comes with its own nuances, and be really sure of where they want to spend their energy and bandwidth on, and why they are doing so. And once that is there, then go immersive, understand what is the way of working in that country, understand what are the aspects that they really want to leverage and build upon, and then approach that market in that manner. Because each country comes with its own nuance of not only harder aspects, but also softer aspects in terms of ways of working and culture.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Since the nature of markets is very, very different, where Denmark is right now ahead in terms of meeting this sustainable development goals. How do you think the Indian startups and, let's say, the stakeholders in the Denmark market, they can collaborate to solve the SDGs and also kind of achieve equitable growth in the coming years? So how can India as a market leverage on that, and what key learnings can be adopted by Denmark from the Indian market, which are actually working well right now?
Yeah, I think it's a very relevant topic, because there has been a lot of talk recently of this whole green partnership between India and Denmark. And Denmark, I would say, has been a pioneer in clean tech in general, whether it's the water or waste management and so on. And India as a very large country has an enormous need, I would say, of leveraging this clean tech in a very big way. So this whole, for the stakeholders on both sides to collaborate and make use of the opportunity that each country offers, I think there's immense unearthed potential that exists. There are, very regularly we come across in the Danish startup environment, we come across clean tech companies that are doing lots of things. And then same in India also. So the question really is, how do you collaborate and find opportunities, whether in Denmark or in India, to build upon that green partnership and really make well. There are, I think, very few countries in the world that put emphasis on this green as an agenda to the extent that Denmark has done, and it reflects in the business culture to a lot of extent. If you see the leaders in the renewable energies, for example, Vestas have been from Denmark and so on. So I think there is anyone in India who's looking at green as an area, and Denmark offers immense varieties of partnerships and market to really leverage. And I would highly recommend them to consider it.
Absolutely. Mr. Dev and Mr. Iyengar, if we could also hear from you on your thoughts of how can this collaboration further deepen, especially in this particular area?
Shivangi, as Ambassador mentioned, and also the initiative taken by the Invest in India with Mr. Bagla heading it. As Danish companies go to India, they also adopt a lot to address the Indian needs in terms of cost, in terms of featuring to the Indian environment, and startups can play a very important role in that ecosystem too. So, be it in clean tech, be it in wastewater management, be it in waste disposal, waste management, the entire water sector, where Larsen and Toubro is one of the largest players in the Indian subcontinent. We already work with both small and major Danish companies in this area. And then the startups ecosystems in these areas would be also very relevant to bring in adopt those technologies to the Indian conditions. So that I see personally as a big opportunity. And then that becomes a bridge to also work with Danish companies here when the startup companies establish themselves in Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. Dev. Mr. Sridhar, if you could hear from you.
So, sure. So, I just wanted to pick up on a couple of interesting points that Ruchikar mentioned on to address needs in the Danish market. See, I think sometimes basically startups have a very broad spectrum of the market they want to address. And what that means is there are too many things, too many problems to solve. And startup is usually too small to address those. I think it's important to find niches in the market that you can solve well. And in case of startups, I would say you can solve well than your competitors, because you have limited resources, you have limited funding, people, everything, and time. So you have to conserve your resources, conserve it via frugal experimentation, and basically take that approach, and in a way that extends your runway. Find these specific niches that you can build solution for, and partner, and then find partners, not because they may be leaders in that space. Find partners who are aligned with your business model, with your thinking, because I would say any kind of venture you're in, you start with a -2 or -3 years, and the first 2-3 years, probably first year or two, you take in figuring out what's the right approach. So that kind of partnership, both internal and external, internal meaning the team, external meaning other businesses you're partnering, you have to basically take that approach and be flexible. So I think that is a key part of it, and try to solve a problem that you can do better than others, because that will be your differentiator as a solution provider.
Absolutely. Mads and Navneet, if you have anything to add here, while we've already heard from Ruchikar, Mr. Dev, Sridhar, if there's anything that you would like to add and share the tips with the startups who are listening to us.
Yeah, I would just like to add one point. I think what Sabajit mentioned about product adaptation is very important, and I think co-creation and collaboration can bring in, perspectives from both cultures and markets. So, startups from one market collaborating with startups from another market can make more holistic solutions. So the challenge remains how we match those startups and find the right partners.
Thank you, Mads. Mr. Kapoor, if you have anything to add here.
And this is, yeah, I would just reiterate the points that have been made. I think for the startups, it's worth remembering that Denmark has more Fortune 100 companies for its size than most other countries in the world. So real opportunity to think of it differently. It's a great culture, great people, technologically advanced, very open and collaborative, but also very direct. So very important to lead with great uprightness and make sure you build trust. Be very, very direct and honest. And it's a place where there is appreciation for new ideas and innovation. So take advantage of that and build win-win solutions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kapoor, for re-emphasizing on the importance of the relations between the two countries. I think also as we move towards the end of this engaging panel discussion, of course we've discussed that how corporate innovation plays a very important role even in this international expansion, and we are glad to have partners and players like you who've already ventured into this segment and have been supporting innovators and startups already. As a part of the initiative also that has been launched, while we already have 10 international bridges with different countries, we also look forward to launching a central hub and a central platform where matchmaking of Indian startups with the Danish ecosystem can be done. So while we do have a few initiatives in mind, and we'll be collaborating with you and more such players who are open to partnering with us, as the last cent, what are your thoughts in terms of how do we take this relationship to the next level? If you could just hear from you, that's really going to be great, and of course we'll adapt those inputs as well. Sure, we can start with you, Mads.
No, I'm pressing all the buttons here. Sorry for that. Who was that addressed to, Shivangi?
Mads, we would love to hear your thoughts on how do we further deepen this collaboration while we've already launched the Indo-Danish Innovation Series, and we're also looking forward to have a central platform where matchmaking of Indian and Danish startups can be done with the stakeholders in both the markets. What other areas of collaboration do you see, which Startup India being the nodal agency, and with the support of the Embassy of India in Denmark, we can actually take this collaboration to the next level. So what would your thoughts be on that?
I mean, we are in a lucky positions where there are a lot of stakeholders, both Indian and Danish, who want to see this move ahead. As I mentioned, we at IDCC collaborate very broadly. We are a close partner to the Indian Embassy in Copenhagen also, and as I mentioned earlier in this session, directly supporting the collaboration of Indian and Danish startups is not something we have dealt with in depth before. I have spoken before this session today with a few of the stakeholders from the Danish side that are already supporting this. We have the Innovation Center in Bangalore, where we opened a new office recently, and other actors as well. And we have been brainstorming on how we can support this. And I look forward to, together with the support of Invest India also, to bring something forward. I think the matchmaking point is interesting, and it's also perhaps the most challenging. Also, how do you establish a presence in Denmark, which is important to make sure that those collaborations become of a certain quality, right? So we look forward to support that, and I hope we can reach out after this session and in the future as well.
Thank you so much, Mads, for your active participation here. And of course, we'll be working together very closely on this initiative. Mr. Leenders, Mr. Iyengar, Ruchikar, if you could hear from you on what are your thoughts on this?
Maybe I can go next. I think if you choose a few areas, whether it's green or sustainability or cybersecurity or data privacy, and really dive into a few segments that are of greater interest to the market in Denmark, and bring forward ideas or startups that are focused in those areas, that may help accelerate some or allow us to think of a more natural next step here, apart from everything else that's on.
Absolutely, we've noted that. Thank you so much. Yes, Mr. Linder.
I'll be, and I will just go next. Yeah, I've been actually browsing through the comments that the different people watching posted, and really lots of interesting stuff going on there. What I think is important, what a bit my conclusion is don't expand to a country, in this case Denmark, just because of the sake of expanding, or because you think you can get some funding or some help. That's not the starting point. The starting point is find a niche, find something that actually works for this market, or the combination of India, Denmark. I think the colleagues on the panel are also offering lots of areas, and I think in general technology-driven solutions are what we're looking at. Specifically for hospitality, this is an industry which is super well established in Denmark. However, that should actually not deter you. It's an opportunity, because people get comfortable, people do things in the same way for 20 years. So that's also one advice. Look at what might be an obvious solution in India, but actually in some European markets and in Denmark might not have been solved yet. Good luck.
Yeah. So just to add to my to the points that have been made, I feel the key thing is to focus, right? And there are areas and sectors where there is enormous amount of work that has happened in Denmark. You could take, for example, life sciences, strong hub. Similarly, dairy and meat processing, again a strong hub, right? Similarly, clean energy, clean water, again strong hub. And also, last but not the least, design. It's one of the Danish strengths. And how do you combine that? If someone on the Indian side wants to combine that, I think that could be one area that I would say. That could be one way to go about it.
Absolutely. I think deep diving into each of the sectors and tapping onto the existing opportunities, definitely, one really focused way of moving forward on this one. Any last thoughts you have, Mr. Iyengar or Mr. Dev?
Yeah, I would like to add, Shivangi, for startups in India to establish in Denmark with the ease of doing business index. Even from Larsen and Toubro's own experience, we are 4 companies working here, setting up in the last 20 years. It takes anywhere from 2 days to less than a month with zero capital, I would say. So even the capital which you use to set up can be used as a working capital. So it is one of the easiest things to set up in Denmark. And I think for startups, this is also would be a very good news to go forward with.
That's definitely a wonderful opportunity. Thank you so much.
I have a slightly different point of view as well. So to be able to establish a presence, I think startups, given that you have limited resources, could also experiment with doing things online. For example, you can sell innovative solutions online, test the markets, select partners, and do all of that before establishing a physical one. That's one way to do it as well. And if your assumptions are validated, if you have a market, then go all out in terms of the next step. So this would be an iterative approach, also probably a low-cost experimentative based approach, where you basically see the results before taking the next step. And at every step, startups and these companies will have questions. So you need to have a peer group that can help you along the way. Someone who has been on the same journey, faced the same question and solved it. So I don't know if your organization establishes these kind of peer groups. It could be related to a a specific industry. It could be related to administrative type of questions and how do I things like that. So different kinds of peer group would be really helpful for the startups.
Absolutely. I think it's a great idea. And of course, we'll also build on making these joint working groups where, people can leverage on each other's experiences and also, exchange best practices and their learnings and their experiences. Thank you so much for joining us. It has been a great session, and it was an absolute pleasure to hear your thoughts on multiple synergies between India and Denmark. Just to summarize the panel discussion, I think some key learnings have come out, and I'll just take the liberty to quote unquote a few of them. Innovation can come from anywhere, as mentioned by Mr. Navneet, and he also mentioned that startups have the capability of changing the DNA of an organization because innovation lies at its very core. Mr. Iyengar also mentioned about how teams can now collaborate anywhere, and expecting the assumptions, you should expect the assumptions to go or maybe prove wrong, which of course can be a key learning for many of the startups who basically they should be agile and they should really not be stuck in their approach. So thank you so much for that. It was also mentioned by Mr. Leenders in terms of really connecting with the customers and making sure that there's assurance on the other side to really restore the confidence in the post-COVID period as well. Mr. Ruchikar also mentioned about not really treating Europe as one single market or single country, because each of the region has different insights, opportunities, culture, and challenges as well. So it should really be treated very differently rather than one single marketplace. Mr. Deb also mentioned about certain sectors which offer key opportunities, specifically clean tech, waste management, water, and a few more. And really these partnerships can actually bridge the gap between companies and the startups where they can collaborate together. Mads also mentioned about leveraging on the innovation capacity of Denmark, which can be synergized by the scaling capacity of India. And of course, product adoption and co-creation is going to play a very important role. Corporate and startup partnerships definitely remain at the forefront of this joint collaboration. And a few things which could also be leveraged on is how do you identify country-specific advantages, hire better and diverse technical talent, have access to wider range of resources available globally, integrate new research findings in products and processes, establish alliances with local suppliers, universities, leverage on the R&D centers and the capacity which is already existing in the markets. And very, very important, please understand the requirements of the customers very well. We thank each one of you for joining us today. India and Denmark are natural partners, and we are confident that our engagement will go onwards and upwards. Thank you so much to all the panelists who joined us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. To the audience, we thank each and every one of you for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed the session and it added value to you. In case you have any questions, please write to us at dipp-startups@nic.in and we'll be happy to assist you. We are open to partnering with more such organizations that can help us with value inputs. Lastly, for those who are interested in expanding to Denmark or the Nordic region, we have a registration form link right at the bottom of the screen. And for those who are already registered, we'll keep you informed on the follow-on sessions. Stay tuned for the Indo-Danish Innovation Series. And on behalf of the Embassy of India in Denmark, Invest India and Startup India, we thank you very, very much for joining us today. Thank you.